All right. Tonight's presentation is being hosted by the Yavapai County Master Gardeners. We are part of the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. Every county in Arizona has a co-op office. You may be familiar with some of our other programs such as 4-H, food safety, nutrition education, STEM and commercial horticulture, and small acreage support. Master Gardeners provide science-based horticultural information. Tonight's presentation is on roots, tubers, and bulbs. Our presenter is Kathy Watts. Kathy has lived and worked in the Verde Valley for over 30 years. Her professional background is rooted primarily in hospitality and the food and beverage industry. She has grown food in a variety of ways, including indoors, grow bags, unconventional containers, sub-irrigated planters, raised beds, and of course, traditional in-ground gardens. She is a recent Master Gardener with Yavapai County Cooperative Extension and hopes to help you achieve your gardening goals. With that, welcome, Kathy. Take it away.
Hi, thank you very much. And thank you all for being here. My name is Kathy Watt, as Lauren told you, and I'm a Master Gardener in Yavapai County. Tonight, I'd like to share some information with you about growing sweet potatoes, Jerusalem artichokes, and garlic in central Arizona. I hope that this presentation will provide some useful information for your own gardening practice at home. Excuse me, I have notes. This is the contact information for the University of Arizona Master Gardener Association with the Yavapai County Extension Office. This contact information for the university, we're here to help you with your gardening questions and help find solutions to common and not so common garden problems. Okay, so this presentation provides the basics of successfully growing sweet potato, Jerusalem artichoke, and garlic. These crops are some of my favorites because the harvest of these nutritious and tasty and easy to grow plants can be cured to store for months, providing gardeners with long-lasting returns on their growing efforts. So here's a short list of some planting and growing considerations. As with all garden plants, selecting the correct location, preparing the soil, and selecting the best adapted variety will make all the difference in yield and overall success. Unlike other crops, when we start from seed, roots, tubers, and bulbs are started with pieces of the mother plant. Sweet potatoes are grown from slips or vines that have sprouted off of the mature root. Potatoes and Jerusalem artichokes are started with pieces of the mother tuber with a few eyes. And garlic starts or segments or cloves from a mother bulb. We'll go over the importance of preparing the soil, variety selection, temperatures, the right fertilizer at the right time, harvesting and curing, and the pests and diseases to be on the lookout for to protect your crop. So choosing a location. When selecting the best spot for your garden, the sun plays a vital role. Depending on where you live, animals will likely be an issue if the garden is unprotected, especially in this warmer summer months. And protection from heavy winds and overbearing weather, such as monsoon flooding or June heat waves, should be a factor in deciding where you grow. Look for an area that has good sun exposure during the middle of the day, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. This should be given to thought should be given to plant rotation from the previous season and the soil quality. Is it tired? Do we need to address the soil texture and structure? Roots and tubers prefer fluffier soil that won't restrict their growth of a tuber or the swelling of a root. And finally, is water easily accessible? Summer gardens do require more water, so convenient access to water will make your garden site much more appealing and easy to work with. I like this graph. I got it from the U of A Cooperative Extension website. This offers great information about probable temperatures and precipitation in Cottonwood and Prescott. Temperature is always a factor when planting your garden, and that goes for roots, tubers, and bulbs too. For example, getting your sweet potatoes planted when your average daily temperature is around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit will ensure a good start with enough time to mature by fall's harvest. While potatoes need an earlier start with soil temperatures above 50 degrees Fahrenheit to grow big, beautiful tubers before soil temperatures are above 80 degrees and they stop growing. Garlic, on the other hand, requires colder temperatures, less than 50 degrees, during the first few months after planting in the fall to ensure good vernalization and bigger bulbs at the harvest the following summer. The sweet potato, we're going to start there with sweet potato. The sweet potato is a member of the morning glory family, and it's a native to South American tropical climates. The starts are slips or vines grown from a mature root or sweet potato that you get started or grow indoors a few months before planting time. Always amend your soil with well-composted organic matter and wait to plant those starts until the weather is reliably warm. Planting distance should also allow for the vines to grow. Last year, I think I used tomato cages to provide vertical space for the vines to take over, because they will take over. And sweet potatoes are a tropical plant. They thrive in hot, humid environments. So expect at least 100 days for your sweet potatoes to mature, but certainly harvest them before the first fall frost. And this year I started slips from 3 different varieties: the traditional orange or Beauregard, purple sweet potato, and a Japanese yellow sweet potato. Oh, when planting them, we'll get to that in a little bit. Starting your slips is easy. And this is now my preferred method. I've tried sprouting a sweet potato in a glass jar suspended by toothpicks, but this is so much faster. I recycled a plastic salad greens container and filled it about halfway with potting soil and placed a sweet potato on the soil lengthwise and dampened the soil. Be careful not to overly soak that soil because the sweet potato will rot before the slips have a chance to form. So damp is the key. And then you'll start to see the roots sprouting into the bottom of the tray. That's why I like to use the clear tray, so you can see what's going on underneath the soil. The key for me was keeping the container warm and providing light as the slips started to sprout. A warm, sunny window would work for this. However, I just used simple LED lights. And once the slips or vines sprout after about a month and grow to 6 or 8 inches long, you break off that slip or emerging vine off of the potato and place it into a container of water, which is in the center photograph here, until a healthy batch of roots form. This takes a week or 2 for them to get, that's probably 2 weeks there on those roots. And last, you'll take these rooted vines and plant these slips into deeply composted soil that you've prepared and really water them in. Sweet potatoes like about a 12-inch spacing, and I kind of crushed them in a little bit because, as you can see, I have a lot of containers that I'm growing sweet potatoes in this year.
Wow.
And yeah, I figure, well, what I crowd them in size. I don't mind smaller sweet potatoes. I'll make sure I feed them. We grow our sweet potatoes in sub-irrigated planters. These are SIP planters. My husband made these with barrels, drain tile, and PVC pipe. There's drain tile in the bottom of those with sand and a landscape cloth, so water wicks up from the bottom. And it wicks up from the bottom into the root zone of the plant, and the sweet potatoes seem to really love it. I top water for the first 2 weeks when planting sweet potatoes, either here or out in the ground, just until they get their start. Once they are established and drawing water in through their roots and up to the bottom of these particular reservoirs, they do really, really well. The plastic barrels also provide a warmer soil temperature, which the sweet potatoes like. So if you have soil temperatures in the 60s and 70s, high 60s in the ground, you'll have soil temperatures in the 70s in these barrels, which they do seem to really like it. And the location of these planters is excellent because it has all day sun exposure. The soil that we use for growing these sweet potatoes is our own blend, and it's kind of a mixture of what we have around the house, but we call it a fluffy blend with Kellogg's organic soil, perlite, native soil, and shredded Amazon cardboard. So pull all the plastic off and we shred it up, and that adds a nice fluffy texture. It'll be better as it breaks down more. And the sweet potatoes will grow larger if there's less tension or resistance in the soil as they expand and grow. This is the fertilizer for sweet potatoes that's recommended. With deeply amended soil, at least 6 inches, featuring a well-composted organic matter is a great start for sweet potatoes. And according to Jeff Schilau's May 2015 article in the Backyard Gardener, which you can find online, about growing sweet potatoes in Yavapai County, adding a 16-16-8 fertilizer at the rate of 1 to 2 pounds per 100 square feet. So that equals about, just visually, those barrels, about 1/3 of a cup goes in those barrels. You work it into the soil about 6 to 8 inches, and it will give you, it gives the sweet potatoes extra nutrients that they need to grow big roots. And you notice that the phosphorus in the middle is a higher number at 16, and that's what you need to grow big tubers, big roots and tubers. I also like to fertilize my sweet potatoes growing in containers in a 5-10-10 liquid fertilizer. I do that about every few weeks during the growing season. And because when you're watering in a container, you do tend to flush out the nutrients. And it flushes them out a little faster with watering. So on to harvest and curing, and hopefully you'll all have harvests that look like this after a season of growing. Most sweet potato varieties mature in 90 to 100 days, and they should be harvested before the first fall frost. Should an early frost take your garden by surprise, you'll want to get your sweet potatoes out of the ground as soon as you can. And unlike tubers, like potatoes, sweet potatoes will be damaged by the frost and begin to rot in the ground. So that when the vine gets damaged by the frost, it goes right down into the roots, and they don't do so well. I like to first harvest the edible leaves. They're beautiful green leaves, and perhaps blanch and freeze them for later because they are edible. And actually, I do pick them off throughout the whole season and put them in stir fries. They're great. Then I carefully dig up the roots and try not to damage the skin of the sweet potatoes. Now I can use my hands in that really soft soil and pull them out without like using a spade or a fork or something. But if you're careful, you can use either one of those things. The nicks and cuts to the skin, they promote decay in those areas as they cure. And curing sweet potatoes is very important because it makes them taste so much sweeter. It ensures a sweet taste and adds to the storage life of the sweet potato. Now, I think mine ended up storing about 4 or 5 months last year because we just couldn't get down into cooler storage temperatures without putting them in the fridge because we're in Arizona and it just doesn't get that cool in my basement or my downstairs. Let's see, the simplest curing method is to place the sweet potatoes on a rack or in newspaper-lined boxes in a warm and well-ventilated room, ideally between 85 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, and at around 85% humidity. Now, my house is probably high 70s in the summertime, and getting into the fall, and that's what I ended up curing them at. So I cured them a little bit longer, but using the same system, and they still cured just fine. Because at 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 85% humidity, the recommendation is a week to 10 days. And I went longer, and they were great. I have, let's see. Ideally, after curing, you're going to move the sweet potatoes to a storage space, such as a root cellar, and keep them between 55 and 60 degrees with a humidity of 75 to 80%. That's for the best long-term storage outcome. Now, onto potatoes. Potatoes are a wonderful staple crop that are easy to grow in the home garden. We're going to briefly go over how to select a type and variety that suits your needs and growing conditions. How and when to start your potatoes, a fertilizing strategy, and the time to maturity for your harvest. It's important to know that potatoes are a member of the nightshade family, so care must be taken when choosing a garden site. Don't plant potatoes where you have recently grown other members of the nightshade family, such as tomatoes and eggplants, because they're susceptible to the same or similar pests and diseases, like the tomato hornworm and late blight. So choosing the types and varieties of potatoes. This cool days, which is a number of days from last frost in your area to soil temperatures in your garden over 70 degrees. So it's days of last frost in your area to soil temperatures reaching 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the span of time that we're talking about with cool days. And that's one of the most important things to know when you're choosing your potato. You want to choose a type and variety that is conducive to your area and your growing condition. Cool day requirements are broken down into early season, which is 60 to 100 cool days to reach harvest. Mid-season, which is 101 to 135 cool days required. Late season, which is 135 to 150 cool days. And I've starred early season here because I think that is the most recommended for warm, sunny climates like Arizona. And yeah, when growing potatoes in warmer climate, growers benefit from a shorter time to maturity, which can be achieved by the early season 60 to 100-day varieties. So I created this little chart here so you can just get kind of an idea of the things you should be looking for when selecting a potato. The only thing is I did not include the early, mid, and late season column on here, but most of these potato types do have varieties in those season lengths, in those cold day lengths. So when you're doing some research on potatoes, because there are over 200 varieties of potatoes, you'll make that determination at that time. For best results, you want to research and choose a variety that will reach maturity when soil temperatures are just below. They will mature when soil temperatures are just below 80 and above 40 degrees Fahrenheit. There are more than 200 varieties of potatoes sold throughout the United States. Each of these varieties fit into one of 7 potato type categories, which is russet, red, white, yellow, blue, purple, fingerling, and petite. Each type offers early, mid, and late season variety classes. For example, early season potatoes such as Irish cobbler, purple-skinned Carib, and the prolific red Norland are good choices for warm southern climates. Mid-season, 101 to 135-day potato varieties such as Yukon Gold and red Lesotho can also be successful here when planted early in the spring. And late season varieties need 135 days of growing time, 135 to 150 days of growing time, but they typically produce a heavier set of tubers that keep longer and better in storage. But those are for more northern climates. And this chart shows just a few varieties of these popular potato types, the russet red, yellow, and blue purple. Each type has a description of the typical flavor and texture profile and the best culinary use, another important factor when choosing your seed potatoes. Within each type are assorted varieties. Finding the best variety for your garden's growing season and condition will improve your yield and overall success. First, choose the type of potato depending on your intended best use of that potato. So say for grilling or salads or roasting. And then next, you want to select a variety based on when and where you're going to grow it in your garden. For example, grow bags or containers. I know that the soil temperature is going to be a challenge. The soil gets warmer faster. So I'll need to select an early season varieties that I can use for roasting, grilling, and summer salads. And I particularly like the purple Cooperative potatoes. They do real well for me. I have found that growing potatoes in a repurposed ice chest, one of those big white ones, reduces the soil temperature by about 5 degrees. And mulching with a nice thick layer of straw versus organic wood chips or something can bring the temperature down by another few degrees. This keeps my plants below the maximum growing temperatures just a little bit longer when the tubers are starting to form or are forming. As you know, potatoes are grown from seed potatoes or small potatoes that are grown specifically for their sprouts or buds. Choosing certified disease-free seed potatoes will most likely provide a better harvest, as they have not been treated with sprout inhibitors for longevity on the grocery store shelf and are grown to resist disease. You also know what type of variety and day length that you're buying with those too. So that really helps a lot when you're picking, rather than going to the store and just buying, say, a russet. You don't know what the day length is on that particular potato variety. Chitting encourages the sprouts to emerge. This is thought to improve harvest and gives that plant a head start. A simple way to chit your seed potatoes is to place them in an egg crate with the ends up. This is where most of the buds will grow from. Place in a warm 70 degree spot with indirect sunlight. After a week or two, you'll see nice sprouts emerging from the potato. That's when they're ready to be planted into the ground. I've purchased certified organic seed potatoes in the past for my garden and saved some of the smaller potatoes from the harvest of those that were planted, those seed potatoes. I saved them over the winter for the next season. And you can usually get away with skipping a year on purchasing certified seed potatoes for one season, because after that, sometimes the performance and disease resistance starts to diminish. After allowing the seed potato to sprout or chit, cut them into good-sized chunks for planting, 2 to 3 buds per chunk, and let them heal over for a few days before planting. This extends that value of your bag of seed potatoes, which tends to be more expensive than eating potatoes like you would buy in the store. If you decide to cut the seed potato, make sure there are at least 2 or 3 eyes or buds per chunk. And if the seed potato is smaller than the size of a golf ball, you don't want to cut it down, just plant it like that. And keep in mind, when purchasing seed potatoes, a good rule of thumb is 5 pounds of seed potatoes equals 45 to 75 pounds of harvest potatoes. The time to plant your potatoes is when the soil temperature is just above 50 degrees Fahrenheit in the morning. The plant's preferred growing temperature is between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. A simple method for planting the potato is to plant to the wrist, which is about 4 inches deep, and space 10 to 12 inches apart, with the sprout or bud side facing the sky. The soil should be heavily amended with aged compost. Indeterminate potatoes, which continue to grow throughout the season, much like indeterminate tomatoes, they benefit from hilling or mounding the soil around the plant as it grows to increase contact with the soil and improve yields. Alternately, you can place the seed potatoes at a depth of 7 to 8 inches, so go deeper when you plant them, and you can skip the hilling process. The photo on the right is my fingerling bed. It's a repurposed ice chest, and the insulated walls help to keep soil temperatures in a happy place for the potato plants, and we get better yields. Oops. Sorry. Okay, fertilizer. On to potato fertilizer. Seed potatoes can be planted and started with a 10-10-10 fertilizer applied at 1 to 2 pounds per 100 square feet and mixing it into the planting area. You can also dig a trench next to the prepared row that you're planting your potatoes in and add several handfuls of bone meal per 10-foot row, or 1/8 of a cup of a 10-20-0 fertilizer and cover the trench with 2 inches of soil. The following month, you'll come back to that trench and add 2 inches of compost to that trench and cover it with soil. So you're fertilizing alongside the row of potatoes that you have planted. This application places phosphorus and vital nutrients directly to the root zone where the plant needs it. An alternate application of fertilizer when growing, is a different method, would be at planting, you use a 10-10-10 and you mix that into the soil. A week after emergence, you give it another fertilization with a 10-10-10 after the greens have popped up and they need that nitrogen to really get the plant going. And 4 to 6 weeks after it emerges, after the plant emerges, you're going to switch to a 5-10-10 fertilizer and fertilize every few weeks during the growing season. I use a liquid fertilizer and it seems to, it works more quickly for me and it gets that phosphorus right where we need it. It's important to apply fertilizer that's high in phosphorus and potassium a little further into the growing season to direct the plant's energy to forming the tubers rather than the leaves. Now, harvesting and curing. Potatoes average 90 to 120 days to maturity. When the plant flowers, as it is in this first photo, the plant is signaling that the beginning of tuber growth. You can begin to harvest small new potatoes within a few weeks after the plant blooms. In central Arizona, you can expect to harvest after most of the vines and stems have died back, which is about midsummer, and that's to get your average size potato, which is usually about 110 days from planting. Unlike sweet potatoes, you can leave potatoes in the ground to cure for a few weeks. After removing the tops of the plants, you should stop watering them and cover the area with a thick blanket of straw to shade and keep that soil cool. No water, just in the ground, curing. And you can leave them like that for a few weeks and they'll cure nicely. Or alternately, you can dig up the potatoes when the plants die back and leave them unwashed, dirty, just like they are here on the right in that photograph. And you can brush off some of the dirt gently so you don't nick the skin, because that, again, it affects the curing of the plant or the potato, and it introduces rotting organisms that will degrade your potato. Curing temperatures are recommended at 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit with 90% humidity for a few weeks to improve long-term storage. So it's probably pretty good to put them in the soil. Now, the photo in the center, it shows what the plant looks like just before harvest. That everything is sort of dying back. There's no more vigor. It's just time. It's time to pull that one up and get your harvest. We're moving on to the Jerusalem artichoke. Artichokes are a perennial sunflower, known as sunchokes among other names, and they were cultivated by Native Americans along with beans, corn, and squash. And it was they cultivated them for their delicious fleshy tuber. Jerusalem artichoke is a knobby root that resembles ginger, and the Jerusalem artichoke is smaller and sweeter than a potato, but has a nutty flavor. They are very high in prebiotic fiber, the prebiotic fiber inulin. And they have a reputation for giving diners of this delicious tuber the wins, and that is no joke. Additionally, Jerusalem artichokes are an invasive plant. I recommend growing them in a space that is contained and dedicated to just growing Jerusalem artichokes. Each plant can produce 75 to 200 tubers in a year, and each piece of tuber can grow into a plant. I guess as an aside, I would recommend growing pole beans with them because they can use the stalks of the Jerusalem artichokes as a trellis. So that does work too. There are more than 25 varieties of the Mammoth French. I'm sorry, more than 25 varieties. The Mammoth French, White, Stampede, which are early to mature, Brazilian White, Brazilian Red, But they're some of the most popular varieties, which range in colors, because most of us have only seen them kind of that golden off-whitey color. But they range in colors from red, white, gold, and purple. Additionally, the plant stalks, if you have livestock, can be used. They're a real high protein fodder for animals such as goats, pigs, sheep, and cows. The deer in the yard, really, the deer around here, they really love them. Okay, so choosing the variety of your Jerusalem artichoke. They are available commercially under several trade names. Many are existing variety stocks that are believed to be duplications or variant forms of the same strain, with slight differences appearing due to soil or culture. Several varieties or selections are available from seed companies. So at the same time, you'd probably, you could be looking for tubers, say through Johnny Seeds or somewhere like that. You would see if they also have the Jerusalem artichoke tubers for start. I know lots of people actually go to the grocery store and start with those in the produce section. Interested growers should plant local stock, which is known to be adapted to the area and produce acceptable yields. I've picked up plants at our local farmers markets, and they were amazingly prolific. So the best time to plant your Jerusalem artichokes in central Arizona is 2 weeks before the last frost date for your area. You would create a trench, as shown here, sort of on the right, that is 4 to 5 inches deep in well-amended soil. I recommend adding compost to the soil before planting. You plant the tubers or pieces of tubers with 2 to 3 buds. But if you divide a tuber and cut it like you would a potato seedling or a seed potato, you don't want it to dry out as you would a potato. You want to plant it right away while it's still moist. You plant the tubers 12 to 18 inches apart and backfill the trench with soil, and you keep that soil evenly moist until the tubers sprout. Mulch the bed with 2 to 3 inches after that with organic matter. Tubers should sprout in 7 to 14 days, as long as the soil temperature is between 65 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So fertilizer for Jerusalem artichokes. They're easy to grow. Jerusalem artichokes are really easy to grow, and they are quite resilient. They do need space, and you can expect the stalks to grow up to 10 feet. They are massive. They tend to shade out plants below them, but their sturdy stalks can be used to trellis pole beans. Additionally, they do offer wind protection by creating a windbreak in the garden. Fertilize your plants with a high phosphorus fertilizer in early spring. There are very few pests and diseases that affect the hardy Jerusalem artichoke, although slugs can eat holes in the tubers, and white fluffy fungus called sclerotina rot it does affect Jerusalem artichokes, and if it is discovered, it should be removed, and you should remove the plant to avoid spreading that fungus. Jerusalem artichokes are ready to harvest in late summer or fall, after the sunny flowers and stalks have turned brown and die back, which is about 130 days after planting, and generally after the first freeze. So you let the first freeze get the Jerusalem artichokes. It does tend to make them sweeter. They can be gently dug up using a garden fork after the plant tops have been cut off and removed. Don't forget to feed them to your goats, sheep, pigs, and cows. Also, be aware any remains of tubers left in the ground will sprout. They will sprout the following spring and take over your garden bed. I know from experience. Some gardeners feel strongly that the tubers are sweeter if left in the ground until after the first frost. So you want to stop water a week or so before harvesting to allow the soil to dry out. Again, this does help the Jerusalem artichoke or the tuber to cure. Curing and storage of Jerusalem artichokes begins with washing and immersing in a diluted bleach water solution to kill the microbes that love to break down and spoil your food. Now, if you think about it, Jerusalem artichokes are very high in the prebiotic fiber inulin. Prebiotic means really your biome, your bacteria in your body. Bacteria love inulin, and that's exactly what you're growing here. So you do want, this is a little different approach to curing. You do want to try and kill any microbes on the outside of that Jerusalem artichoke, so they don't just have a feast on your Jerusalem artichoke when you're trying to store it. After you've treated them, you rinse and dry the tubers, and they can be stored in sand or root cellar for 2 to 5 months at about 32 degrees, which is pretty cold. Unfortunately, they don't store as well as potatoes or sweet potatoes in the root cellar, a standard root cellar out this way, but they can be sliced, blanched and frozen, freeze-dried, dehydrated, or I guess just dehydrated for long-term storage. Now onto garlic, which is one of my favorites. Garlic is one of my favorite plants to grow. The edible bulb was traditionally used for health purposes by people of ancient cultures: Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, Chinese, and Japanese. Garlic is still being studied today for its potential to prevent and treat disease, but I love it because it is delicious. When planting a garden bed in your garden, there are a few factors that will make all the difference to a successful harvest in the following summer. The type of garlic you choose, whether it be hardneck or softneck, the location, the planting time, and the temperature. So garlic does prefer sandy or clay loam soil with a pH of 6.0 to 8.0, which is good. Not too acidic, which is a little easier for us to achieve probably out here, something a little more alkaline soil, at least in the Verde. At least in my yard, I guess. The time to maturity for garlic, something to remember, is 250 to 270 days. So they're going to be in your garden quite a while. So garlic vernalization, which is really important. Over the winter, let me start again. Choosing the type of variety is one of the more important variables in successful garlic harvest. Over the winter, the garlic goes through a process called vernalization, whereby the cold temperatures stress the seed and divide it into separate cloves. The increased day lengths and temperatures brought on by spring triggers the garlic to bulb. So all of those divisions created in the winter will start to swell and form the bulb. There you are. That's how you get all of the cloves in a bulb. The more time garlic has to grow before forming the bulb, the larger the heads will be. And the colder, the better vernalization that the garlic goes through, the more cloves it will be. There are 11 different horticultural groups of garlic. 3 of them are classified under softneck, which is the silver skin, artichoke, and Middle Eastern. And the hardneck varieties of garlic are divided into 8 groups. That's porcelain, rocambole, purple stripe, glazed purple stripe, marble purple stripe, Asiatic, turban, and Creole. Because hardneck types need longer and colder vernalization periods when grown in warmer temperatures, they may begin bulbing too early. Because when the daylight hours are more than 13 and air temperatures are greater than 68 to 70, and soil temperatures are over 60, they're going to start bulbing, and they may not have had enough time to really build up. They haven't had time to grow. So if it gets too hot too soon, hardneck garlic bulbs will be small. Unless you're really tricky and you figure out how to kind of hack around those constraints. Softneck types are more tolerant of warmer climates and not as picky about vernalization conditions. They tolerate a warmer winter than the hardnecks do, but both are excellent types with numerous varieties to choose from. So when you're choosing a cultivar, the horticultural group is either hardneck or softneck. The cultivar is basically the variety, the subgroup or varieties. There are 11 major varieties of garlic and hundreds of named cultivars of the major subspecies. Oh, sorry, I got that wrong. When choosing why or which garlic to try in your garden, consider first the requirements of each major horticultural group or type, hardneck versus softneck, and how you would accommodate them in your growing space. After that, have fun choosing the cultivar that sounds the most interesting and offers the most for that section of precious garden real estate that they'll be occupying for the next 250 plus days. So these are the hardneck versus softneck characteristics. This table gives a quick summary of hardneck versus softneck garlic characteristics. If you're thinking about ordering online, now is a good time to order your seed garlic for the fall planting season, or maybe a little bit later this summer, before the stock does sell out. And you can see in this chart, the desired characteristics are for longer storage, and you need a softneck variety. It's going to tell you this group is silver skin. And then there will be varieties within the silver skin group. So that should meet your needs. Planting your cloves, this is how it's done. Garlic should be planted in September or October in central Arizona. You want to select clean, dry bulbs and break them into individual cloves and plant the same day as divided, leaving the husk enclosing the clove intact. Plant 2 to 3 inches deep and 6 inches apart with the pointy ends standing up. Rows should be between 12 to 18 inches apart, and you want to cover the cloves with a few inches of soil and irrigate immediately after planting to settle everything. And then you're going to want to top that with 4 to 6 inches of straw mulch, because again, that really does help insulate the cloves in the ground and the garlic in the ground and promote a good hardy bulb when you harvest next year. Garlic cloves require 4 to 6 weeks of cool weather at less than 40 degrees Fahrenheit after planting to vernalize the plant and to induce bulb production. During the fall and winter, the bulb will produce roots and some top growth. Weed management is also critical when growing garlic. You want to make sure that it doesn't have to compete with the nutrients, but the straw mulch, deep straw mulch really helps there. So this is just a quick sample that I took for you. This is straw mulch on the left and wood chips or wood mulch on the right. Now this is the same day, same time, same place, same location, just maybe a few feet apart. In central Arizona, it helps to manage soil temperatures during both the vernalization period after planting and in the fall during bulb formation leading up to the harvest. So temperature management, soil temp management is really important. I found that in areas where I had used straw mulch, about 4 inches thick, the soil temperatures were at least 6 degrees cooler. Garlic decides the bulb based on soil temperature, soil temperature, day length, air temperature, and vernalization. Bulb maturation occurs when soil temperatures reach 60 degrees. Hot weather with temperatures over 90 degrees halt bulb growth. So you really want to try to get your whole growing season and bulbing done prior to 90 degrees. I found that a thick layer of straw really helped improve the bulb formation in spite of the heat this June. So this was actually, those temperatures were taken in June during the very hot little period in here, there's that heat wave. So fertilizing your garlic. After the weather warms up in spring, long strap-like leaves will develop. You want to keep the plants well watered through spring and early summer. Hardneck garlic will produce scapes in late spring, and the scapes should be removed to encourage larger bulb formations. When the scapes pop up, you can just nip those off and put them in your salad or cook with them or do whatever you want, but don't let them stay on the plant because they will take away from the bulb. As with most vegetable crops, adequate levels of nitrogen and phosphorus are critical for good production. Before planting, you want to add 1/3 to 1/2 pound of actual nitrogen, or about 2 pounds of 10-10-10 fertilizer, equivalent amount of organic fertilizer per 100 square feet. If using compost, you will need to estimate the amount of compost that will provide this amount of nitrogen. So usually 3 to 4 inches of well-rotted compost will do the trick, incorporated into the planting area. I used alfalfa cubes this year, as described in the March 29th, 2017 Backyard Gardener, and they did really well. Additional applications of nitrogen should also be made in the spring as the soil warms. Phosphorus fertilizer increases bulb size. Banding or placing near the root zone assures availability. You want to apply a ½ pound of triple superphosphate, which is 0.450 per 100 square feet, because rock phosphate and bone meal are not as readily available as non-organic forms of phosphorus. So perhaps it's rock phosphate and bone meal are not the best choices for spring fertilization, but better with fall planting because they will actually have some more time to break down. So harvesting your garlic. In June or early July, the leaves, as you can see, will start to turn brown and the tops will begin to collapse. Irrigation should be stopped at this time to prevent rotting. At harvest, the bottom 3 or 4 leaves should be dead and the top 5 or 6 leaves should still be green. You want to carefully loosen the soil with a spading fork so that the bulbs can be gently removed from the soil. 6 to 8 plants can have their tops tied together, and then you can hang these from a rafter or shed in the garage to dry just as they are. You don't want to brush them off. I mean, you don't want to wash them, you just want to kind of brush them off a little bit. The garlic can also be braided or simply trimmed and stored for later use after it has cured, after it's hung. You should set aside the best of the harvest for next year's planting, next year's crop. So curing garlic. Here we have a beautiful braid on the right and the bundles, as I described before, they're on the left. Now that's how you actually cure the garlic. And then for long-term storage, you would brush them off, trim them up, and braid them as you do there on the right. You want to harvest garlic on a warm day after the soil has had a chance to dry out for a week or so. Too much moisture around the bulb will damage the protective skin and the bulb will not store well. So allowing the soil to completely dry out will improve curing for long-term storage. And also, you just gently want to brush off the dirt. You don't want to wash the garlic. Bundle the entire stalk and bulb into bunches of 6 to 8 plants and hang them to dry. You can also lay the garlic on a drying rack, taking care not to overlap the plants and allowing for good circulation. After about 3 to 4 weeks of drying in a warm, well-ventilated space out of direct sun, the garlic is ready to trim or braid for long-term storage. Now on to pests and diseases. The best way, in my opinion, is to prevent diseases in sweet potatoes, Jerusalem artichokes, and garlic is to start with properly cured and stored seed stock, or disease-free and pest-free sweet potato slips. So if your sweet potato slips have aphids on them and things like that, you definitely want to avoid that. You want to make sure all of your planting stock is fresh, top quality, and free of disease and any kind of potential for disease introduction. Starting with certified seed potatoes or healthy start significantly reduces the possibility of introducing pests and disease into your garden. Crop rotation, spacing, fertilization, and soil pH and management of such pests such as whitefly and aphids will help reduce exposing your plants to disease-causing organisms. Pest control. I think that the key to successful management in the garden is distinguished between the presence of these little guys and the outright infestation. Early and consistent intervention is important when trying to keep the presence of pests under the infestation threshold, way under if you can. Beneficial bugs do love to eat these pests. So keeping a balance of pests to beneficials is a great way to manage the problem. You want to engage with the natural order as an ally. Insecticidal soap is another method that you can use for spot treating when they start to get above that happy threshold in your garden. You can use an insecticidal soap, and you can buy this from your favorite garden supply or make it yourself. And to make it yourself, you use just a solution of 1 gallon of water and a tablespoon of dish soap or Castile soap, something like that. Then you will just apply this, spray this on and apply this just to keep the population in check, but you can also use a strong blast of water from the hose, which tends to be a great way to manage aphid and whitefly. Although they will be resilient and come back, you can just be persistent, I guess, and get after them all the time. Now the hornworm, I haven't found that insecticidal soap works very well on the nightshade loving green hornworm, my least favorite garden creature. So hand picking of green hornworms should they find your potato plants, will keep those populations down, but sometimes they still just really take over. And I have to find, I find that on a dark night with a black light to help illuminate them, because they show up under a black light. I guess phosphorus, maybe it's the little stripes, but they go a little bit, they're very visible on your plants using a black light. And just go on out there and pick those babies off. Now, soil-borne diseases affecting roots and tubers can be managed also by keeping the soil pH a bit more acidic, so a little on the acidic side. Common scab is, which is the photo of the potato down the bottom here, is controlled or greatly suppressed with a soil pH level of 5.2 or lower. And you can maintain soil pH levels between 5.0 and 5.2 by using acid-producing fertilizers such as ammonium sulfate. I do use elemental sulfur from time to time in my garden to help reduce the pH. And you want to avoid or limit the use of such alkaline-producing amendments as lime and, say, manure. And as always, you want to rotate your crops. Well, this concludes my presentation on growing sweet potatoes, Jerusalem, artichokes, and garlic. So I hope you found this information helpful, and I thank you for your participation and thank you for growing. Are there any questions?
Kathy, I have to say this is such an interesting presentation, and after listening to how to grow garlic, I'm amazed that I got any garlic at all this winter.
And you did well.
Well, whatever I did worked, but I didn't do it intentionally. So we have so many questions for you. So let me jump right in here. This one is from Trisha. Have you ever planted pelleted potatoes? If so, how are the pellets different from the chits?
Pelleted potatoes. No, I have not.
Okay. Does it matter whether this is from Craig, does it matter whether you plant in a raised or bed container? And this was at the beginning, so I'm assuming it's sweet potatoes or potatoes.
I am growing in, I've grown in beds, in raised beds and in containers. And it depends on the variety, and it depends on the day length that you're working with. I had purple potatoes that I grew in containers. They were the purple Caribs, and I got potatoes probably about that big. I was thrilled with that. Now in my raised beds, I didn't have as much success, and I think again it has to do with the daylight hours where they weren't in quite as good a spot. So it really depends on where you're growing, and you have to be mindful of the day length of the potato that you're growing. If you're growing in a container and the temperature gets too warm, you're going to shorten your growing season. And it could be this, it could be 5 degrees warmer in the container than it is in the ground. So you just shortened the formation of the tuber just by temperature alone.
So do you plant your potatoes in a Or do you place them in a full sun or part shade area?
I have put my potatoes in full sun.
Okay,
So I don't do full shade because they tend to attract whiteflies in full shade.
All right.
So I do better with full sun.
And Bill wants to know, where did you get your seed potatoes from?
I got some from Tractor Supply, and that's where I got them the last time.
Okay. Tricia says, my Jerusalem artichoke tops were eaten off by javelinas, but are regrowing tops again. Do you think the tubers will still develop correctly?
Yes, I don't think javelinas can hurt a Jerusalem artichoke. I think there's very few things that can hurt the Jerusalem artichoke. I think they're resilient, and the tuber will form. Perhaps the plant will put even more energy into growing that tuber. That's my opinion, because I was abusive to my Jerusalem artichokes because they had taken over a space, and they still were fabulously prolific.
Okay, and Donna said, I tried Jerusalem artichokes one year, but they tasted muddy or overly earthy. Did I do something wrong?
That probably has to do with curing. And I think possibly if she didn't do a rinse with a really diluted bleach water solution and then rinse after that, perhaps that had something to do with that.
Okay.
And then again, there's like 25 different varieties, so they have different flavor profiles.
Bill wants to know, what is the best way to prepare Jerusalem artichokes to eat?
I think it's you cook them, you slice them. I believe the best way, because I've read about this online. You slice them thin and you cook them to a certain temperature. Actually, you cook them down and you try and break down that fiber a little bit, and you mix them with other things. Just raw, bad idea. Don't put them in your salad.
Okay, and I'm going to go divert quickly here because Donna wanted to know if there's going to be a Monsoon Madness event this year, and unfortunately not. But in September, we're going to have a plant and book sale event, so stay tuned for that information, Donna. Tricia wanted to know, have you ever grown potatoes in straw? Also, have you ever tried fingerling potatoes? What are the differences from regular potatoes? Lots of questions.
Okay, yeah. So no, I've never grown them like the root stout method in straw. I haven't done that. I've seen it, but I haven't done that. I know that the ones that I mulched with straw did much better, and I did get some potatoes that formed even a little above the soil line. So they were like 50-50, and which I found unusual. But I did use quite a bit of straw. I think straw and potatoes goes together well. And then the other question was,
have you ever tried fingerling potatoes?
This is the first year that I'm growing fingerlings, and I'm kind of excited to try it. The plants seem to be doing really well, and I check underneath. You kind of go in and do a little evaluation to see how many tubers are forming, and they seem to be doing well. I'm growing those in coolers. Those are the ones I'm growing in the big marine coolers. And the difference is the fingerling potato is actually that type of potato. I mean, a lot of people confuse those with new potatoes, and that's just really not the case. So they are probably they're up in the culinary scale when it comes to potatoes. They are a little fancier. They have a little the texture is more fine.
And that's what you buy at Sprouts for your gourmet dinners,
That's right. That's right.
Mary Barnes wanted to know, how do you shred boxes to make fluffy soil?
Well, my husband does that. And we have a heavy duty cardboard shredder, but you still have to be kind of gentle with it because they're really not, it's a heavy duty paper shredder, not really designed for cardboard boxes. So we're discriminating between which boxes we throw in there. And he cuts it into strips like this, shreds it, and I get buckets of cardboard shreds that are about, maybe a ½ inch wide. And we just stick all that, mix it in with the soil, and it really adds a lot of air to the soil.
Okay. Stephen wants to know, do pocket gophers eat all the tubers?
Oh, not at my house. Because
you don't allow them?
That's right. That's right. No, most of my tubers are grown in a protected area. They can't get in there because it's on the deck, right? So it's like a courtyard area, and they're in containers. So I don't really have that problem
issue
this year. Yeah. Now I have other issues in the other part of my garden with peppers and whatnot, but not pocket gophers yet.
So I have a question. So back from the Midwest, I know what a root cellar is, but what is an alternative to a root cellar here when we're storing?
You know, it's a good question, and I've done things from using, like a small ice chest, the electric kind that you can turn the temperature up a little bit, and the humidity stays pretty well. But I just think that, maybe a bucket with sand in it through the wintertime would help to keep them cool in a basement area. We're still working on that, my husband and I. So we may be just freeze drying them. We have a freeze dryer, or canning them or something like that for long-term storage.
And where do you get your potato slips from?
The sweet potato slips?
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, I started them this year. I
from your last year crop, or?
I go to Whole Foods and buy organic potatoes because I want to make sure they're not sprayed. That's how I do my sweet potatoes.
Okay.
So that's where I got the 3 different varieties. And normally I just grow the purple and the Beauregard, and this year I'm doing the Japanese yellow. So that's what we did this year. You can buy them online. I think, what is it? So Baker Creek was offering slips just about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. And then do you recommend to use store-bought garlic for your cloves to start with? That's what I did. Or do you recommend getting them based on varieties, et cetera, buying them from a store?
I have used garlic from the store, organic garlic from the store. But my next venture would be into trying some different varieties and maybe trying 1 or 2 other ones. But I have used them from the store, and the photograph of the garlic that I used in the presentation was one that I grew.
And do you find that garlic is susceptible to pests? Because garlic has that smell. So, I mean, I plant garlic around other plants to keep them safe from pests. So do you find any pests with garlic?
I had no trouble with pests.
Okay.
Yeah, so, no trouble. And I think we used some very fragrant herbs like thyme and rosemary in the garden as well. And I think it helps to deter critters from, going into that part. Helps a little bit, but garlic, I had no trouble.
This was the first year I planted garlic. I was so excited after learning all about, picking garlic and curing garlic. I did everything wrong, but at least I have 25 garlic bulbs, so I'm happy.
You bet. It still works. Yeah.
It still works, and hopefully next year I'll do better with this information. So we have no more questions, but we have a lot of kudos. Excellent presentation. And for me, I think I speak for everybody else, I learned so much from things that seem so easy, but there's so much technology and science that goes into it. And I thank you for the time that you put into this. This will be posted on the U of A website in a couple days. And I want to note that our next presentation, a little one-off from normal gardening, but it is preparing your the items that you're growing for fair entries, because we are really encouraging our gardeners to participate in the county fair in Prescott in September. And so we will be having a full presentation on July 26th, and it will be followed up by a horticultural hands-on presentation at our extension office in August on how to do cut flower presentations. And so with that, I thank everybody for participating tonight. Kathy, thank you for all the work that you did to put together this presentation. I learned a lot. And it says, thank you for your presentation from the Sedona Natural Garden Club. So
great.
you have a great fan base here.
Wonderful.
And
Well,
thank you. And this ends tonight's presentation. Thank you for everybody for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you next month.
okay,
Thank you all.